As interest rates rise, the problems start to compound, and it's not just for those at the bottom, it's going to affect basically everybody. Now, I'm going to show you today what has already happened. It's not something that's going to happen next year or 20 years from now. We are already in the middle of it today. Let's begin. The first thing I wanted to show you was this: US existing home sales, both month over month and year over year. We haven't seen this type of activity, or lack thereof, since 2008, the beginning in 2008, right at the middle of the whole chaos of the housing crisis. Now we can look at this and say, well, you know what? It's just a blip and things will turn around just like it did in 2020. But what is actually happening here? Well, I think it's understood that when you increase interest rates, that has an impact on mortgage rates and, of course, the ability for people to actually pay down their debt. Their mortgage is basically a growing percentage of what they're able to spend. And that was okay when interest rates were at zero, but now it's not the case. The average mortgage payment was double over the past couple years. So of course, people are not going to be able to spend what they did before. Look further into it. You could see for yourself, there are a few things. The orange line is just showing us the existing home sales. That's what we want to focus on for this chart in particular. And it just breaks down the fact that other than that short dip that was experienced in 2020, you could see we haven't looked at this type of activity since, again, housing crisis. The next aspect is that home sales fell for the ninth straight month in October as higher mortgage rates scared off potential buyers. So all of that just to say there is a slowdown in sales. Now, what about the prices? Are we talking about prices here? That's not what I'm saying. Although we have seen areas that prices have come down quite substantially. Even in the biggest bubble in the world, Toronto, on average, the prices have come down over 17% from their peak. Now that peak was a very high peak. That's a Mount Everest type peak right there. So even 17% still leaves it at a very high level. The point is, it did come down and doesn't look like it can go up much higher right now, even if it does somehow stabilize. As long as mortgage rates are high, this puts downward pressure on prices. Here we have it, month supply of new houses in the United States. This is the big one. People need to understand this, okay? You could look at this chart, and this comes from Fred, but I mean, obviously, you see this data everywhere, okay? Look at your own city, look at where you live, you'll find this data for your own place. Because, when you look at this on a national level, it's not going to tell the story because one area might have no homes and one area might have entire empty subdivisions. But the supply of new houses, this is important. Inventory in general. And you could see that this has increased quite substantially. But it's not the number of homes. It's the month's supply of new houses. And this essentially tells us that because sales are so low, well then, at this pace, we can have several months of people coming in. Look, where are we at right now? I mean, right in that range of, again, financial crisis, 2009, 2010 range right there of the amount of homes. Now, if sales started to pick up, they started to double and triple from this point, okay, then that number is going to come down. You could see what happened during 2020, where that drops down to just over 3 months of supply. Some areas were right down to bare minimum. It all depends on that. But what changed? You see, what was that big change that occurred, especially at the beginning of 2022, I should say? What was that big change? That was actually the increasing of interest rates. Hadn't seen that in so long that the market said, wait a second, is this really happening? Can we no longer do the fix it and flip it? Could we no longer, do all these games that we were doing with the trying to get people into homes, trying to make them buy their second home, their third home, their fourth home, all these things, well, suddenly more inventory is on the market. Isn't it so coincidental? I mean, really, think about that. Isn't it so coincidental that as soon as mortgage rates increase, that inventory does as well? You tell me. I'm not saying that if mortgage rates were to decline significantly, that this wouldn't just turn around. I'm not saying that. I'm suggesting to you, isn't it a coincidence? I want to talk about something right now. Here we have it. In its earnings report, Walmart said that it's making strong grocery share gains, including from high-income households. High-income households. Customers who came to us less frequently in the past are now shopping with us more often, including high-income customers. So we have people that used to go to the high-end luxury retailers, can't afford it, they're now going down a level. And perhaps somebody who was shopping at Walmart before now is going to the food banks more often. These things happen. These are part of the cycles. And during these times, what do we experience exactly? I want to make it clear. One thing we have is the increasing of interest rates. We have the reduction in money printing. As a result of that, mortgage rates increase. Debt that corporations normally would be able to get real cheap, no longer cheap. That means they can't expand. That means that they have to start laying people off. At the same time, because of rising interest rates, stocks have gone down. When the stock goes down, they lay people off. If people are laid off, they don't have as much money as they did before. They can't afford to buy the things that they needed or the things that they want. And you get this slowing economy. I hope I made myself clear. That's kind of the overarching theme here for today. Without easy money, the tech sector faces layoffs and losses. Of course, we've been seeing that. 120,000, the last time I checked, the layoffs tracker for 2022. Carvana lays off 1,500 employees following stock freefall. You see what happens here? People say, who cares about the stock? Well, 1,500 employees do. And by the way, all of these employees, why you might say, okay, well, that's him and that's all. But what if, a good percentage of the employees at Carvana were going to this one restaurant on the street, or maybe they were buying their morning coffee at the little corner store and getting the newspaper and buying, this and that there. Now those employees don't go to that store anymore. They don't have that walk through traffic, and now the guy goes out of business. So it has a knock-on effect, has a domino effect. Toxic monetary policy created the FTX monster. So I've been covering FTX. I actually had quite a few other things to cover here, but I don't know if people are kind of tired of that. You let me know in the comments. But essentially, toxic monetary policy, when you create a world and incentives where there's so much easy money that everybody seemed to be calling it out, of course you're going to create these things. And that's what I talked about in those FTX videos. People made it seem entirely political, and this was all set up from many years ago in order to, facilitate this and that. And why doesn't anybody point out the fact that all of these different things, whether it's FTX, whether it's something else, only really existed, only could have it existed in a world of such cheap money? 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck heading into the peak shopping season. Credit card usage, I showed you, is at a record high. You look at their balances, increased substantially as well, credit card balances. I mean, this is heartbreaking. And, no matter what salary you make, as I've covered so many times before, no matter what salary, you're living paycheck to paycheck. That's the way it goes. 60% of Americans, I wonder how many are, if you include just one paycheck away. That would be interesting to see those stats. Inflation bites. High grocery store prices continue to drive food bank use. This is, if I believe, I read this correctly, this is from Toronto. or Canada in general, but it's going on everywhere. That's the point. It's that wherever you look around, you're going to see prices that are just simply undeniably too expensive for people. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's cars, if it's food, if it's energy, it doesn't matter. You're going to find that. And the higher interest rates go, the wider spread that becomes and the more it affects people. UK. The volume of goods sold in shops and online was weaker than expected in October, underlying the cost of living crisis draining consumer spending power. This is just one of so many, okay? There are so many things happening right now with the UK, and obviously when you look at the inflation numbers that they've shown, it is really significant that it has gone to this degree. And how are they going to get it down? Well, they continuously try to increase these interest rates, and it's not enough. So what that means is it's going to have to stay elevated for a while. The UK has to be in a recession for a while, and a lot of people are going to be laid off. That's the UK. Is anywhere else really different? It doesn't matter if it's 11% here or 9% here or 7%. As long as these rates stay elevated, basically not at zero for a while, then you've got a problem. All of these things can be resolved for you, the individual, by simply taking care of your own circumstances. You got to do your best. Okay? This is, these things that I talk about all the time. This is the pillars of prosperity. Two things. You got your income and you got your preservation or preparation. These are the things that I think people just gotta be reminded of all the time. If you found this video informative, hit that subscribe button down below. You're gonna love tomorrow's video. Take care.